Police announced the first arrest in connection to the Manchester Arena bombing from a few nights, a 23-year-old man from the England area. Also, AT&T is crediting back all calls from wires and wireless calls for customers going from the U.S. to England for the crisis. Plus, Fox News has to retract the story, but doesn't really give an apology. We'll talk about that and more of the stories that we talked about yesterday in our conversations all day for the 23rd of May, which makes today the 24th of May, 2017. This is the Daily Recap Podcast from thisisaconversation.com, a website that hosts the best conversations on all the great topics that people are talking about and a few that some people may miss, just to make sure you get to hear what some people, even though a tiny portion of people, are saying are pretty important things that we say. My name is Jacob Payne. I'm your moderator for the website and all of social media to get out the conversations. Glad to have a chance to have this conversation with you via the podcast and to have conversation with you all day online via social media and our website. Our main website, of course, is thisisaconversation.com, where if you stop by the website and click on our sponsors page, you can help us out, help us keep the conversations going with you by looking at our sponsors who are going to do their best to help you get what you need at great prices. And a great price right now for gift certificates from Cloud9 Living. This week's sponsored spotlight is Cloud9 Living, which takes care of you and great extravagant packages for vacations and bucket list type things and any type of travel that you would expect can't happen. They probably have a plan to make that thing happen. And what you can do is just buy a gift certificate and use it when you want to. And if you don't want to go on that trip, a little too exotic for you, give it to someone who wants the exotic trip. They can take it by themselves. How's that work? And 10% off all gift certificates via the link we have at our website. Go to thisisaconversation.com/sponsors and click on Cloud9 Living or any other great sponsor to help us keep things going here. Now, of course, you can find us online all over the place at the website. At Twitter, we are @TH_conversation, and on Facebook, find us at This Is The Conversation. These are the conversations we had, starting with the first one we started for the 23rd of May, 2017, where we pulled a story that got a lot of international attention, not a lot of talk with all the things that are happening here in the States, and, of course, everything overblown by the Manchester Arena bombing. But 2 men in Indonesia were publicly caned for homosexuality, for actually engaging in gay sex. Now, obviously, this is a totally different culture than we have here in the United States, and homosexuality is not a crime, although some people would like to make it that way, the way things work here. But in India, Indonesia, and places like the Indias, those places are very strict in their religious bent and very strict in their conservative bent and don't allow certain things that are done in other places. And so 2 men who actually were caught engaging in homosexual sex were ended up caned in public for the crime. Look up the story for that one to see more details on that one and some of the public backlash. Although inside the nation and inside the people in the region, not a lot of backlash as you would expect. Also happening 2 nights ago is the Warriors. They swept the Spurs to reach the third finals in 3 years for themselves. Now, we talked a bit about them as being the first post of the day, so we're going to kind of gloss over this one right now. But the Spurs are now, or the Warriors should say, are now waiting for the winner of Cleveland and Boston. Cleveland last night going up 3-1 in that series, so they can close out their series on Friday to begin the finals early next week. The police arrest a 23-year-old man in connection to the Manchester Arena bombings. Now, we'll have more to talk about that throughout today as the conversations go on. They actually arrested 3 more people today, which we haven't posted in the conversation yet at the website. So we're learning that the person that was that pulled off the attack, the man who blew himself up in the attack, was not a lone wolf, was not a loner, although it's people who described him as kind of a loner type person. But he was a British citizen by birth. He was raised by Yemenis parents and actually traveled to Yemen for school and stopped going to school and came back to London with a bit more devout, wearing the long robes, growing a beard, and being more into the faith. And no one really took much notice of what was going on, apparently, until the incident happened. We're learning more about the sect, the cell he may have been a part of as they arrest more people and give more details on how that went down. Of course, ISIS taking responsibility but the authorities still say there's no real proof that it was ISIS triggered or ISIS inspired, other than the fact that it was a bombing held in the name of Allah or ISIS in that theory. A poll coming out saying that 77% of Americans believe that the nation's moral values are in decline. That means we are becoming less of a moral nation. Now, your view on the values depends on your view on your values, because a lot of these things reflect personal values. And so if you believe America is a conservative nation, you're probably agreeing that we're not as conservative. If you believe America is a liberal nation, you're probably agreeing that we're not quite as liberal. So it's very skewed based on the fact on how you look at things. But what the basis of the survey, basically the whole point of surveys, is that most people think that we're not doing well in the moral standing. We're not doing great for upstanding and doing good things in America for Americans or anybody else. And that can be reflected on you by trying to do things that are a bit more better, a bit more along the lines of our moral objectives, even though that's more of a personal bent than a secular bent for the states. The actor who played James Bond in the most Bond films, and of course the most silly, crazy Bond films, Roger Moore, passed away after a short battle with cancer. He died at the age of 89. Now, Roger Moore, essentially the second James Bond, except for the one little stint from George Lazenby, who did one Bond only, not the name of the title, but just did one Bond movie only, and took over for Sean Connery and took Bond in a very, very, very crazy bent. He rode the Bond wagon, you could say, until the waning of James Bond popularity, mostly because a lot of the technology that was being shown in the movies was becoming real stuff. So it's hard to play off all the gadgetries and gadgets that you get from a super spy organization that were a fantasy, when a lot of things are actually just weeks down the line from being released for the normal public. One of my personal favorites was View to a Kill, which of course had Duran Duran doing the theme song. Of course, he was always also in For Your Eyes Only and Moonraker. Of course, some other really, really weird ones that James Bond got out of in those series. A lot of people are mourning the loss of James Bond, in this case, Roger Moore, although many people will say that Connery is, quote-unquote, their favorite Bond. Let's go to Jerry Jones, who gave a gift to his local Arkansas police force, North Little Rock, which is local here to me, where we are, gave a large gift for the police force to handle a lot of things locally, and, of course, shipped them all out to Dallas to watch a game for the Cowboys. That gift was deemed unintentionally, ethically violating. An unintentional ethics violation, if you say it in actual English. So Jerry Jones, trying to be a boy, trying to be a guy, trying to do his best for his hometown, ended up doing something not so great for his hometown police force. A lot of people were complaining about the violation or possible violation well down the line, being that one rich guy, even if he no longer lives here in the state, can essentially buy off a police force by literally buying off a police force. He literally bought them off and sent them on the trip to Dallas, all expenses paid. So that wasn't such a great thing for the police force, except they're dealing with the consequences here in Arkansas. Now, from Jerry Jones to Donald Trump. Trump released his budget officially yesterday, and the budget cuts go to Medicaid, to SNAP, to student loans, and to federal retirement programs. Essentially, billions of dollars chopped off the block for those programs, the safety nets, if you will. And what it does is it allows you to offer up more tax cuts to people with more money. They can pay less money into the system if they're not paying more money out to the safety net recipients. Many people all over the place not very happy with the way it came down, but this was something that the government's budget administrator said is just basic economics, balancing things out. You take some things out to make some things work. And if you pay less here, you don't have to pay so much there, and that's how it all balances itself out. We'll see how long it takes to get Trump to pass this budget and how well it will actually be received when it's actually going around. AT&T is going to credit wireline and wireless customers for all calls and texts from the U.S. to England for the next couple of days. This is to make sure everyone is over here can keep up with everyone over there, and all the safety concerns for family and friends and whoever you have over in the Manchester area or all of England, since it's going to be free and open. So if you have a reason to call England to check in on a loved one or a not-so-loved one, It's a free call if you have AT&T service for the next couple days. No word after we put this out whether other companies were going to do something in kind, but AT&T stepping up to the plate on this end. Maybe reactionary things, trying to jump on the bandwagon to get some good PR from the get-go, but they are doing something that ultimately is for the good. But ask Jerry Jones how that works out sometimes. NFL Hall of Famer Cortez Kennedy died at the age of 48. When we put the post out, we didn't have a cause of death, and I did not have a chance to check in on this one later on in the day. Cortez Kennedy was famous for being a Seahawk, a very popular person out there on the West Coast in Seattle. Also played some time in Dallas, and actually was from here in Arkansas, a small town in Arkansas, believe it or not. So a lot of people mourning the loss of Cortez Kennedy, a guy that just an all-around nice guy from all the people we heard commentating on this online about the sport and about this death. And as of right now, I don't know any real cause of death. We'll see if I'll pick up something up later on in the day. We actually had plenty of NFL stories on the day. The next one that popped up, I came in pretty quickly as I was looking for a story to link for the Cortez Kennedy. The NFL is having their meetings right now, going over certain deals, and the first thing that they voted on was to relax the penalties for touchdown celebrations. So the officials are going to not be so heavy on touchdown celebrations for 2017. This is going to be immediately. However, if you want to do a twerk, you want to do the Macarena, if you want to do some sort of Irish line dance, that's going to be a bit too far. The jumping, the high-fiving, the celebrating, just being happy about things will not be penalized in most cases unless they really are excessive taunting or excessive celebrations. But if you're doing something that is coordinated or something like a dance, that will still be penalized as is. So that's something that we will see change. The No Fun League maybe getting a little bit more fun with their penalties. Fox News had to retract a story on Seth Rich. Seth Rich is the D.C. DNC staffer who was murdered, but it was hinted that maybe he was murdered for leaking to WikiLeaks and not being robbed in his neighborhood. Fox News went hot and heavy on the story that the police were being told to back down, you may have heard that before, from the investigation because maybe the DNC sort of had this thing happen on purpose and they didn't want anyone to find out about it. The mystery behind the whole story was he was murdered in his neighborhood, a neighborhood that isn't known for having many murders, and he wasn't actually robbed of anything, but it was set up like a robbery where he was shot in the murder. Fox News had to back away from the story, saying that the family requested that they not push the story because there really was any substantial evidence to it. Sean Hannity did it basically live in the air because he sort of broke it on his show. However, there was no apology for releasing the story in the first place, just a retraction of the story for not having the full backing of the evidence. So you can take it that way. This is a story that caught my attention, one of the corner of the eye stories that was just really weird. Neo-Nazi converted to Islam, and then he killed his roommates because they were disrespecting his new faith. And it wasn't a fact that they were just dragging on the fact of his old religion. It was a fact of religion, his old thinking. They were just two guys. They're all in their late teens, 18 to 20, 22 years old. And they were, talking about Muslims, and, these Muslims need to get better at blah, 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 just kind of yak talk. And this one guy who, oddly enough, used to be a neo-Nazi when he was younger, now 18 years old, and has converted to Islam, killed his two roommates. This is a story found on CNN that was rather disturbing and just rather out there, to be honest. Now back to the NFL. Our final NFL story of the day is the NFL owners also voted to move the Super Bowl 55 LV, if you will, from Los Angeles to Tampa Bay. Why is that? Because Los Angeles doesn't have their stadium ready yet and probably won't have it ready yet for time to have all the kinks worked out for a Super Bowl. So Los Angeles will get the year after that to kind of make things up because the flip-flop. Tampa was the next in line to get this one when Los Angeles won it. So Los Angeles not going to get Super Bowl 55. They will get 56 instead. So they're not losing out much. They're just getting a delayed year on their actual big game. The mayor of New Orleans was asking his people and essentially all Southerners in general to back off the glorified past of the Confederacy. They say they're living by a false narrative of history and just romanticizing a time that did not happen in the way that you're living it. It's not like when you get to reading some sort of old English novel and you see people tales of knights and gallant vanting and all that stuff like that, and then you realize that most of the actual time was filled with disease and waste and just a lot of really weird politics based on rulers who had very little going on other than wanting to beat the other person out. The Confederacy was what it was, and he believes that it's okay to honor the history, but if your history is slanted, if you're not looking at the right way, if you have a romanticized version of something that didn't happen, or if you're just dealing with just flat-out lies, you've been lied to or you're believing lies, it doesn't do anyone any good. The narrative of the Confederacy and the South will rise again is something that's great to have as stories, but not great to live on as actual real fact. There were so many atrocities done at the hands of the Confederates, just trying to keep alive the practice of slavery and just things in general, that it's not right to live by this beautiful standard that everyone was happy when there were at least 20, 30 million slaves that weren't all that thrilled about being slaves at the time. A report came out late yesterday that Trump has hired Mark Kasowitz, sorry about that, as his personal lawyer to deal with the Russia probe, something that he has been, something that many people have hinted it should be the way to go. Remember, the White House has lawyers and the president has lawyers, but their job is to defend the presidency and the president from doing presidential things. Things that may turn more criminal, more nefarious. He needs his own personal guy in his back. He needs, the guy on the, you see on the billboards late at night and their TV commercials talking about, are you in a car wreck? Call me. He needs one of those type of guys. And that's apparently what he has, a high-powered defense lawyer who can deal with these sorts of things. We'll see whether it comes about to be needed or not. And the first tweet of the day goes out to Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise says that, oh, yeah, we're doing Top Gun 2. Definitely happened. You can check out online and follow the buzz in that one. But a lot of this is based on all the activity and things going on right now. Time is right and ripe for a sequel to Tom Cruise's Top Gun. Although, since it's been about 30 years since Goose died in Top Gun, that's going to be a little weird thing to kind of figure out why it took so long for that to go on. Plus, Maverick, not that he's at advanced age, would probably not be on active duty in the cockpit at this point. He'd probably be more of an instructor or just a regular trainer on the ground if he would still be in the Navy at the time. Remember, Top Gun was about Navy fighters, not Air Force fighters, which the irony of the whole thing was the Air Force saw a mass grouping of recruits at the time of the release of Top Gun because there were airplanes and people did not make the connection that they were Navy airplanes and Navy fighters because even though they flew off of aircraft carriers. That happens sometimes. Sometimes people don't pay attention. Those were the stories that we chatted about for yesterday. So a whole full slate of things going on for today for May 24th, and we will chat with you about them all over the place. If you'd like to join us for those conversations, it is very easy. Find us on Facebook at This Is The Conversation. Twitter, it's @_conversation, or just go to our main website. You can conversate there as well. Yes, I know conversate's not used in the proper tense, but you know what I'm saying. ThisIsTheConversation.com. Make sure you also stop by the website and help us out by seeing one of our big sponsors who can help you out, saving you lots of money or getting you great things that you may not have known existed, including our big sponsor this week. We are showcasing Cloud9 Living, who can maybe show you a lifestyle or an excursion or a great vacation you didn't think was possible and you didn't think was in your pay range, but they can make both things happen. You'll be surprised at the great things you can tick off your bucket list because of Cloud9 Living. And you can get 10% off gift certificate purchases by going to our website, going to thisistheconversation.com/sponsors and clicking on Cloud9 Living. For more information on my other projects, check out my main website, jclevelandpayne.net, and see what else I have going on there. And stop by and send me a message. You can always email me at jclevelandpayne@gmail.com. Always there, a little spammy, but always able to pick up my message. Thank you so much for being a part of a conversation via podcast or via social media or via our website. day. Thank you for subscribing. We hope you subscribe so you don't miss our conversation. And, of course, join us again tomorrow for another full day of great conversations with you on this podcast. And this